Greetings all, Ferrari-Man 601 here. Welcome back to another 1/400 scale diecast model aircraft review of this, the Boeing 787-10 Dreamliner, rendered in 1/400 scale by Gemini Jets. The Boeing 787, it is a wide-body twin-engine commercial airliner that has been designed and manufactured by the Boeing Corporation based in Tacoma, Washington, in the United States since 2009. And it continues to be operating and continues to be manufactured today in 2020. Built for a new era of civil aviation where efficiency and capacity are the name of the game, the 787 is the first American aircraft to feature extensive use of composite materials in its construction, and also, to call this aircraft American is a little bit of a misnomer. Yes, of course, Boeing is an American company, but a conglomerate, a consortium of many different countries has contributed to the design and manufacture of all variants of the 787, including such far-flung places as Japan, Italy, and India. So, it is a change of pace from Boeing in terms of trying to keep everything as localized as possible to the Americas and bringing in the rest of the world in the design and manufacture of a large production airliner. So, very interesting to note all of that in terms of the aircraft's construction and production. Announced initially on January 29th, 2003, Boeing put out a press release and an exhibition saying that the 7E7 was going to be the next large-scale project that they conducted in terms of civil aviation. The E in 7E7 has many different interpretations of what it meant. It was supposed to mean environmental or efficiency, or perhaps it was just E for 8, considering that the aircraft eventually came to be known as the 787. The program was officially launched on April 26, 2004, when 50 of them were ordered by All Nippon Airways, and initially they were looking for 2008 as an introduction into service. However, problems in terms of the program management at Boeing, cost overruns, delays, and design reconsiderations having to be brought forward did delay the introduction into service of this aircraft all the way to 2011, with the first flight of the first airworthy prototype only occurring on December 15th, 2009. However, despite the prolonged and problematic gestation period, the 787 Dreamliner is now finally becoming the dream that it was intended to be, and to this date, 977 of these aircraft have been produced and are all currently flying in the skies all around the world as part of the next generation of long-haul civil jets. Gemini Jets, of course, in 1/400 scale rendering this wonderful aircraft. It looks absolutely resplendent here, spinning around before us. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at what Gemini Jets have given us here in 1/400 scale of the 787. Before we take a closer look at this model, let's take a look at the box in which it comes to us. Coming in from screen right, there it is, the Gemini Jets 1/400 scale Boeing 787-10 box, with the rendering of the aircraft, of course, front and center, roughly the same size as the actual model. Upper left of the box, Gemini Jets, and then the upper right, made for collectors, by collectors, trademark, and then the lower right corner, Boeing 787-10 trademark, and then British Airways with their little stylized logo. 1/400 scale die-cast model aircraft with our look inside tab in the bottom left. Bottom panel of the box, there it is, Gemini Jets, 1/400 scale die-cast model with their selling points. Side panel here, one of the openable panels, 1/400 scale die-cast model, item number GJBAW1931, and then on the right, another smaller rendering of the aircraft, Boeing 787-10. Top panel of the box, there we go, Gemini Jets, a little collectible model. Warning, contains small parts unsuitable for children under 14 years of age. Item number again with your barcode, and then the other openable panel on the left side of the box, Gemini Jets, 1/400 scale die-cast model, item number, and then your rendering of the aircraft again. The bottom, Gemini Jets, highly collectible, superior quality, all of that good stuff. The look inside opens up to reveal the void, and then a write-up on this particular aircraft, which reads, the Boeing 787 is the world's first completely new commercial airliner where the predominant use of lightweight composite materials will set the standard for all airliners in the future. The 787 features many innovative accomplishments that have never been seen before. Aside from the use of composites, the environmentally friendly aircraft features new technology engines that are quieter and emit the lowest emissions of any previous jet engine. Additionally, the aerodynamic design exceeds any previous design for maximum efficiency. The use of the latest onboard avionics and electronics gives the 787 an advantage over any other airliner currently flying. On the passenger comfort side, the 787 offers improved cabin oxygen levels, larger windows, a quieter cabin, and a very spacious interior design for maximum flying pleasure. For operators of the 787, maximum flying pleasure. Really? For operators of the 787, the aircraft will guarantee lower maintenance costs and flexible interiors that will allow airlines to reconfigure interiors with minimal downtime. Boeing offers the 787 in a multitude of different configurations that allow airlines... I can't get over maximum flying pleasure, for God's sake. Boeing offers the 787 in a multitude of different configurations that allow airlines to have a whole new family of aircraft. They range between 4 models, seating from 210 passengers all the way up to a 330-seat version with varying ranges. Regardless of the choice of model, fuel efficiency and innovation is the key element that will make the 787 the benchmark of all future airliners. 2 complaints about this description: maximum flying pleasure. No. And then, fuel efficiency and innovation is. Subject-verb agreement there. Fuel efficiency and innovation are key elements, plural. That's all better. Now, the technical description on this particular model: Boeing 787-10, livery obviously in British Airways. Aircraft type is the Boeing 787-10. Serial number for this particular one was 60637, line number 956. Registration is Golf Zulu Bravo Lima Alpha. The engines are 2 GE NX Series -1Bs. The first flight of this particular airframe was 17 January 2020. So as of the time of making this aircraft first flew only 8 months ago. Maximum takeoff weight, 560,000 pounds. Cruising speed, 561 miles per hour. Range, 7,400 miles. And seating on this particular one, 330 in mixed class configuration. In schematic view from the side and from above, the length is 224 feet. The height from the bottom of the gear to the top of the vertical stabilizer is 63 feet 8 inches. And then from above here, we can see our wingspan of 211 feet 5 inches. Now, I am not endeavoring to create maximum flying pleasure here, but that's just funny. That's an unfortunate choice of words, maybe, or perhaps it's just my brain, but yes. In any regard now, with the aircraft rotating once again, some more detailed specifications on the 787-10 as we see it before us. Our cockpit crew here, only 2 required to fly an aircraft like this, and that is basically par for the course with essentially every modern airliner. The flight engineer or navigator's position has been completely obviated in the modern era, considering that we have a multitude of electronic systems that can monitor everything going on board the aircraft and outside the aircraft as well, for that matter, thus only requiring 2 people on the flight deck at any one time, both of them being pilots, of course. The seating in this configuration, 330 as the box has told us, but the absolute limit in terms of the exit limit on this particular aircraft, the 787-10, is 440. So if you really wanted to cram people in there on a long-haul flight on a budget airline, yes, 440 is the ultimate exit limit capacity rating for the 787-10. That's pretty remarkable considering this is a twin-engine jet. Overall length, 224 feet for the -10 series, and all 3 variants of the 787, this is the -8, -9, and -10, they share the same wing. The wing has an area of 4,058 square feet, that's 377 square meters. The wing has a 9.59 aspect ratio, and it's swept back at 32.2 degrees, considering that these aircraft are flying at effectively transonic speeds at cruising speed and altitude. The wingspan on the aircraft, 197 feet 3 inches, according to my source here. The wingspan, according to our box, was 211 feet 5 inches. One of those is wrong. The height of the aircraft, 55 feet 10 inches from the bottom of the main gear to the top of the tail. The fuselage, the cabin width is 18 feet exactly. The external width is 18 feet 11 inches. Of course, that's going to be taking into account multiple panels of external structure there for the pressure vessel inside there, as well as insulation for thermal and acoustic dampening effects there. Overall habitable volume of the cabin appears to be about the same in terms of that 18-foot width there, so we have basically an extra wide body scheme on this aircraft now. Overall height of the cabin, though, 19 feet 6 inches, so plenty of room for your, first of all, your passengers and their seating, the overhead bins, and then of course there's space to walk, and then below that you also have a cargo hold area as well in that pressurized volume. Cargo capacity in the Dash 10 is 6,722 square, or cubic feet rather. That's 191.4 cubic meters. Very good there. And of course, on a long-haul jet like this, you'd want a reasonable cargo capacity because you've got up to 440 people, and they're all going to have stuff to bring with them. Maximum takeoff weight for the Dash 9 and Dash 10 is 560,000 pounds, 254,011 kilograms. Maximum payload for the Dash 10, 126,300 pounds, that's 57,277 kilograms. Operating empty weight, 298,700 pounds, or 135,500 kilograms. Fuel capacity is 33,384 U.S. gallons. That's 126,372 liters. Or in weight, that's 223,673 pounds, 101,456 kilograms. Maximum speed of the aircraft is Mach 0.9. That's 516 knots, or 956 kilometers per hour. Nominal cruising speed, though, is Mach 0.85. That's 488 knots, or 903 kilometers per hour. Overall range on the Dash 10, 6,430 nautical miles, which comes out to 11,910 kilometers. Takeoff length required there in terms of the runway length, 9,100 feet, or 2,800 meters. Service ceiling on the aircraft, 41,100 feet. The engines available on all variants of the 787 are the General Electric GE NX-1Bs, which is what we have on this particular aircraft, or the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000s. Maximum thrust available from the engine, that is 76,000 pound-feet at sea level. It's 340 kilonewtons. And of course, you would double that figure because you've got two engines throwing out all of that thrust and power. So yes, a very capable aircraft, and it's very much par for the course in terms of what we would expect to see from an aircraft of this type for this particular purpose right now. And of course, considering it has been in service since 2011, the initial customer, the launch customer really for this aircraft was All Nippon Airways, and they introduced it into service on October 26, 2011. The first flight of the aircraft, though, from Boeing, in terms of the prototype of the Dash 8 variant, was December 15th, 2009. So we very much have a 2010s era design and a 2010s era service introduction on the 787. Primary users, of course, being All Nippon Airways, Japan Airlines, American Airlines, and United Airlines. However, we do, of course, have British Airways flying this aircraft as well, as we can so very obviously see with the livery. They have produced this aircraft since 2007 when production started. They've built 977 of them as of July of 2020. And so far, the total program cost from Boeing, although this is an ongoing production for the 787 in all variants, $32 billion US dollars, according to Boeing's expenditure report in 2011. So we'll see what inflation does lately, but yes, it's a very expensive undertaking on the part of Boeing, and really a multinational effort in terms of getting this aircraft produced, in terms of the components that go into it. Many different countries have provided either technical know-how or actual production for assorted components. Japan has been a big contributor to the 787 project, and that, of course, is one of the reasons that Japanese airlines are flying the 787 in large numbers, because Japan, I believe, produced the most components for this aircraft out of any other country, the other major contributors, of course, being the United States, where the assembly is happening for the 787 in Washington. And then, of course, we have European powers. Great Britain has contributed to the design of this aircraft, as have the Italians, which is interesting. You don't really think of Italy so much in terms of being an aerospace manufacturing country, but they have contributed large components for this aircraft as well, as have India. So really, it's almost reminiscent of Airbus being a multinational conglomerate, Boeing, of course, being an American company. But looking internationally toward pooling resources and know-how and technical assistance in putting together the 787 project, and really I think it really heralds a new era in terms of Boeing and how they put an aircraft together. They're willing to look outside of the United States and outside of North America as well in terms of putting this together in a more cost-effective, sustainable manner. So interesting to note all of that, and of course the result, having 977 of these aircraft produced thus far, it seems to be a winner. Stopping our rotation, and we'll start to take a closer look at the aircraft as it is here in 1/400 scale. First of all, here's the nose. And if you recall the review I did of the 1/400 scale Airbus A350, you'll remember that I remarked about the shape of the nose on that aircraft, and we have a similar shape here on the Boeing 787-10. It is a little bit more of a blunt body than perhaps we would expect on aircraft, and particularly if you want to go to the extreme side of the world, the supersonic aircraft of the world, the military aircraft, and the civil jets in the form of the Tupolev 144 or Concorde. They had very pointy noses for high-speed aero efficiency. But in the civil realm, we tend to see more blunt noses, but we have this very interesting open curving shape across the upper surface of the nose, and that's something that you see on the A350, and it's also something that you see on the 787. It's a little bit of a different proportion visually, but obviously they're doing this so that the aircraft can be more efficient aerodynamically, and quite obviously it works well enough for Boeing and Airbus. The nose itself, though, we can see detail in terms of the printed graphics on the nose. We've gotten a little bit too close in, I would reckon, but more printed decal around the nose tip there, the radar dome or radome, as you can see there, just in decal, but it looks nice and it looks proportional and scale correct, so I like all of that. And then of course moving up toward the cockpit window area, you can see that we have windscreen wipers here, as well as our cockpit windows, which are not entirely blacked out. They have actually been printed in a very deep brownish or golden color. So I like that. I wonder if they're trying to represent any sort of ultraviolet tint that's been put into the windows to try and cut down on sun glare, and ultraviolet rays, of course, would be more intense at higher altitude simply because there's less of the atmosphere above the aircraft, so the pilot's eyes probably appreciate that, but I would assume that the pilots would be wearing sunglasses in the cockpit if they really needed to. Anyway, moving rearward and down a little bit, you can see the nose gear right here. Rubber tires over plastic wheels, and all the gear do roll on this aircraft, the nose and the main gear. And then we start to get into our passenger cabin area. Rears of the cockpit, you can see our L1 boarding door right there. And then, of course, we have got ourselves our windows for the seating area in most of the cabin, which, of course, would be the vast majority of the aircraft's empty space, be full of seats for passengers. We have got static ports and pitot tubes along the side of the nose there, just the rears of the cockpit area. That looks nice. And then, of course, you do have the L1 boarding door with the decals on there, or I should say tampo printing. There are no decals on any of these models, but you can see that there are representations of the levers here that you would actuate if you wanted to open the door. So all of that is there, and it looks nice. And also the graphics on the aircraft in terms of the British Airways titles, the coat of arms of the United Kingdom, which looks much better when you pull away. When you really zoom in on this, it becomes very pixelated, really, because it's a very small feature, but it is there, and it is recognizable from a distance anyway. And of course, you do have your little British Airways blue and red ribbon with the highlight there. That's not a reflection, that's actually printed. I like that, looks very good. And then we start to move the rears. Toward the midship area, just ahead of the wing root, we have got an antenna sitting here, and then basically over the wing root, we have got our little bubble antenna, our blister antenna, and that is for SATCOM, internet, things like that. Moving the rears, we can see that we have a little light array along the wing root here. That's part of the landing lights, I believe. And then we have got door L2 back there. We have some closed window shades through here, and then open window shades again, moving aft. We've got our L3 door and L4 door back there toward the tail cone. Here's the leading edge of the left wing, and you can see just how svelte and streamlined Boeing have made this wing. If we go out toward its end fence area, there really is no end fence on this wing, but we do have a very sharp wing tip, and as you can see, if I put my finger there, it immediately starts to make an indentation. This is mightily sharp, and when I opened the aircraft, I actually did cut myself on the wingtip. I was not expecting it to be that sharp of a point, but it is. Do be very careful with that. Even just handling the aircraft, you can scratch yourself on that pretty easy, and you won't realize it initially because it is so sharp. It's almost like if you've ever sliced yourself with a razor blade. You don't really feel it until later, so be careful. Other than that, though, very, very nice detail on the wing there. You can see our red strobe for the port wing tip. That's very good. And then as we move back inboard, you see that leading edge profile with the shut lines here for the slats that would come down from the leading edge at lower speed to increase the wing surface area for better lift at lower speed. Meanwhile, there is the engine, and we have a Rolls-Royce logo on the engine here. At least I think that's a Rolls-Royce logo. It looks like a double R, but the box very, very clearly says that we have the GE engines on this aircraft. It would make more sense to me that this aircraft would be equipped with the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000s because it's a British Airways plane, and Rolls-Royce being one of the British companies that's known around the world for having produced aircraft engines and cars and everything. Basically, Rolls-Royce has made a little bit of everything over the years, and they are very British. So if this didn't have Rolls-Royce engines on it, I'd be most surprised. But speaking of the engines, you can see that we have got wonderful fan blade detail in there. Gemini Jets have been doing a really good job on these high bypass engines in terms of the blade detail in there. We remarked about that on the A350 review, and it's the same here, and I even prefer these a little bit over the A350 engines because they're really good. And when we look at the aircraft from nose on, you'll be able to see that they are pass-through. You can see through the engines. It looks very, very good indeed. That about covers the aircraft, though, from this angle. Take a look at the aircraft now from the port side. From a profile view, we'll start to zoom in. Take a look back toward the nose. There's all the detail that we saw earlier, but now just from a slightly different angle, and it looks very nice. I guess the only other detail that you can see more clearly now is the partial registration there, Bravo Lima Alpha, visible on the nose gear door, obviously open with landing gear extended. But moving the rears, there you go. Your antennas across the top side of the fuselage, and then the side of the engine. There you go. You can see that we do have, that is a Rolls-Royce decal if ever I saw one. Yeah, that's, yes, very evident. That says Rolls-Royce, absolutely. And then, of course, you get other details across the engine there in terms of external ports for ground crews to interface with the engine and things of that nature. There you go. You can really see that says Rolls-Royce. There's a mistake on that box. Anyway, though, I do like the little chevrons that you see here across the exhaust side of the engine. That's to induce a little bit of turbulence, a little bit of vortex action going on with the bypass flow there to energize the exhaust flow, give a little bit more low pressure immediately behind the engine, and of course the exhaust flow would be coming out toward the center of the engine. You give a lower ambient pressure around the exhaust so that the exhaust can expand out into a partial vacuum basically behind the engine, and that's going to further increase the efficiency because you're going to get a little bit more thrust by that exhaust flow expanding out the back. Effectively, this is creating a diffuser, but strictly with airflow, not with any sort of fuselage components or an extension of the nacelle to create an expansion zone out the back. They're creating a diffuser purely with aerodynamic effects. It's really, really cool, and it does go away toward making the engines more efficient in terms of fuel consumption, but also more efficient in terms of noise mitigation, because noise is waste energy, basically. Energy is not created or destroyed, it just manifests in different ways, and in terms of an aircraft engine, that energy comes out in heat, it comes out in turbulent flow, which is not going away toward pushing the aircraft forward, and it comes out in noise. So if you can use the aerodynamics of the nacelle and use the aerodynamics of the flow coming through the engine, you can actually eliminate energy loss via manipulation of that flow. So that's actually really, really cool. Regardless, you can see the main landing gear now. We've got obviously a tripod gear configuration here, but we have got single bogies with 2 axles each on the port and starboard sides there, so 4 wheels per gear. with a total of 8 on the main gear, and then another 2 on the nose for a total of 10 wheels on the aircraft. Moving rearward there, we have got 2 more antennas. We have got these sitting right at the base of the vertical stabilizer, a larger and a smaller there. And then, of course, you can see the aircraft's registration, Golf Zulu Bravo Lima Alpha. Lower door here, it's a little hatch, probably for lab service if I had to be a betting man. And then, of course, you've got your L4 door right here. Moving toward the rear, there is the empennage. You can see we've got our tail cone and then our horizontal stabilizer coming out from the port side. If we move up, you can see that we have got ourselves very nice graphics here on the vertical stabilizer. Very nice. Great view of the whole empennage assembly there. Your trim tabs, they're not trim tabs, but the whole horizontal stabilizer would be able to deflect up and down in terms of a counterclockwise or clockwise rotation there for overall trim settings. And then your vertical stabilizer coming up. Nice silver paint here on the leading edge thereof. Comes to an apex here, highest point on the aircraft, and then down the rudder surface. And you can see a shut line in there as well for your rudder actuation from port to starboard, vice versa. Very, very nicely done. You can also see the graphics across the vertical stabilizer, very nicely rendered in that tampo printing. No distortion, no smearing or smudging. It all looks very, very nice indeed. And the finish, it's glossy, but not too glossy. And, of course, you can even see the highlights there in the logo itself. It looks very, very nice. And, again, so far, absolutely nothing to criticize on this aircraft. It looks absolutely wonderful, very prim and proper and sleek and modern for the 21st century. Taking a look now at the rear of 787-10, we'll zoom in toward the empennage and tail cone area. There we go. Obviously, toward the extreme rear section of the tail cone, this is all silver to represent unpainted bare metal. This is the exhaust area for the auxiliary power unit, little gas turbine engine. It's a jet engine in its own right, providing hydraulic pressure and electrical power for the aircraft, usually when it's on the ground and powered up, but the APU also can be run in certain phases of flight and also in emergency situations should they lose engine power. The other obvious function of the APU is to provide bleed air, usually used for starting the engines when ground starting equipment is not available or not needed. But the APU also providing bleed air for engines as well as for cabin ventilation and for air conditioning. So very important things that the APU can do. And having an APU also increases the flexibility of an aircraft to operate from different sorts of airports, larger ones, smaller ones, ones with ground servicing equipment, and others without ground servicing equipment to a large extent. So you can see why you'd want one. Across the trailing edges of the wings, there we go, the port wing. Nice amount of uplift on there. I like that. Looks like the aircraft is taking to the heavens, even at a standstill. Looks good. And right here you can see very clearly, and we'll also take a look at this from forward, but you can see the port engine here. It's a pass-through. Put my finger down and I block the light out that's reflecting off of the backdrop. Very, very, very stark view of the pass-through on both of these engines. The starboard engine, quite obviously, it's the same story. Really, really like all of that. I liked it on the A350 model, and I like it even more on this one. That's absolutely wonderful, the detail that they've done. Also, on the exhaust side of the engines, you can see the cone there in the exhaust, funneling that flow out of the compressor stage there, and obviously the exhaust flow would be basically coming through the center here with the bypass flow surrounding it 360 degrees. So very, very nice. The undercarriage area on the aircraft, the landing gear, there you go. Looks good, supports the aircraft nicely. It sits straight and level here on the ground. I like all of that very, very much. And all the axles here are mounted very straight and they roll very freely. It's got some of the best landing gear that I've got on any one of these 1/400 scale models so far. It's very nicely done. I really do appreciate Gemini Jets in their workmanship here. They definitely did their homework and they made this model look absolutely great. Really, really like it. Taking a look at the starboard side of the aircraft now. Very similar to the port side, but we'll do it for continuity's sake. There we go once again. Cockpit area in the nose section of the aircraft looks good. Open landing gear door, of course, for the nose gear. But the differences here on the starboard side, we do have cargo doors represented here. There's another one aft that we'll take a look at later on, but getting in as close as we dare without losing focus too badly. There you go. We can see our R1 door with our armature and handle details there for opening and closing the door, latching it shut, and then our cabin windows, of course, going from fore to aft. Some closed window shades here on this side as well, but it looks very nice, as do the British Airways title graphics and logo there, as you can see. Very nice. R2 door, and then we get into our starboard wing with our starboard engine, or Rolls-Royce decal. Yes. Error confirmed on the box. I'll stop mentioning that now. But anyway, there is our right main gear. Looks good, just as the left did. And then our wing and our wing tip right there with our green strobe here, because this is the starboard side of the aircraft. Looks very nice. Getting back toward the fuselage area, moving aft. There you go. Here is our aft cargo door. And then our R4 door. Antenna detail on the top side of the fuselage yet again, and then the empennage section now looking at this from the right, but looks just as good as it did on the left-hand side. There you go, empennage. Also a nice degree of uplift on the horizontal stabilizers, as you can see. Looks very good. And then the right-hand side of our vertical stabilizer and the rudder area. Looking good. And that partial registration, again, visible at the top of the tail, as is the full registration down there, just forward of the R4 door, Golf Zulu Bravo Lima Alpha. Looking very, very good, coming back across the top side of the fuselage. There it is. There's your blister antenna, and then your forwardmost antenna. And then back toward the cockpit area and the nose. Looking very, very nice. The focus will settle down in a moment. There it is. Good, good, good. Very much liking all of that. This is certainly one of the nicer models that Gemini Jets have made recently. So again, very, very pleased with this one. No complaints about it thus far still. And I'm trying to find things to complain about, and I'm just not finding them. The only complaints I have are about the box right now, if you could believe it. Coming in toward the nose section. There we go. Very, very nice. There's the nose. And our cockpit area has come into focus there. You can see we do have windscreen wipers visible there just below the two forwardmost cockpit windows. That looks good. As do the details around the radome there. You can see the strakes that are converging toward the nose tip itself, and then the circular area that is the shut line, really, between the removable radar dome cover and then the rest of the fuselage. Looking very good. You can also see that we have got an emergency escape hatch here in the top of the fuselage there. That would be the roof section of the cockpit, and that would be a place where the pilots could jump out with an escape rope if they absolutely needed to get out right now on the ground, quite obviously. And then as we start to move outboard, leading edge of the left wing here, that looks very nice. You can see the shut lines quite clearly now for the flaps, or the slats rather, that come down from the leading edge. But there is our engine there, our port engine visible here. And you can see those fan blades look absolutely marvelous. And of course, they are pass-through, visible here as well. Very, very nice. Both of those engines. You can see the starboard engine now just as good, lit a little bit better here, but yes, it looks absolutely amazing. Very happy with the engine detail on this model. Also here from the front, you can see that the aircraft just sits very nicely on the gear. It is sitting straight and level. Any tilt that's evident there is actually due to my camera not quite being on center line relative to the nose. So a little bit of a parallax effect there, but this is absolutely sitting straight and level as far as I can tell, and it looks absolutely great. Once again, no complaints whatsoever about this model. Really, it's a very, very good one, and honestly, I've been a little bit surprised with how good this one is. I was very happy with the A350. I even got a couple more A350s. I like that Air France one that we took a look at. I like that one so much I wanted a couple more. But this is very good. This is very, very good. It's even better than the A350 as far as I can tell. Very, very pleased with this one. Overall proportions here, if we start to move up, taking a look at the empennage area, set the depth of focus toward the rear a little bit more. There you go. Looking good. I like all of that. See the leading edges of the empennage areas. That looks very nice. We're coming back down for our front end view. There we go. I like that. Definitely like that very, very much. And I'm going to hope that the YouTube gods pick this as the thumbnail because I like it. But if they don't, this is going to be the thumbnail. I just like the proportion of this shot. Very, very nice indeed. Going freehand now to take a little bit of a closer look at some details. There is our front end of the aircraft, and you can see perhaps a little bit more closely some of the smaller details that are evident here. With our partial registration there on the nose gear, doors, and then of course moving toward the nose proper of the aircraft, you can see partial registration above the cockpit windows there. Bravo Lima Alpha looks good with our windscreen wipers there. Looking very nice. There's your British Airways title graphics with the ribbon logo, your L1 door with the handles and signage associated therewith. British Airways, the coat of arms there of the UK, looks good. Our little locator strobe there in red, that looks good. Antennas across the top, L2 door, and our port engine nacelle, looking marvelous. Very, very good. And then our port wing leading edges, the wing tip, very sharp wing tip. And across the top section of the wing, there you go. Shut lines for your flaps, slats, and spoilers visible across the trailing and leading edges, as are these little no-step details there visible. Very nice, all legible on both wings. So that looks very, very good. I like all of that. Also, I like the color contrast between the blue of the engine nacelle and the white of the nacelle pylon that actually mounts the engine to the wing structure. Looks very, very good. And then our little fairings across the bottom there to cover up the flap actuators in terms of the jack screws and things in there that would be actuating the flaps. Looks good. Top side toward the rear fuselage and our empennage looks good. Tail cone. Really like that. Also, you can see the shut lines here in the tail section, the horizontal stabilizer with the articulation points for the trim, as well as the shut lines for the control surfaces, the elevators here at the rear, as well as the rudder. Looks very nice. Very, very nice indeed. See our wing root, where the wings actually join up with the fuselage on the model. Not a cradle arrangement. The wings are directly stuck into the side of the fuselage, and I very much like all of that. And then, of course, back to our nose. Looks really, really nice. No complaints about anything on this one for me. It's marvelous. Really, really marvelous. Definitely, it instantly got up into one of my favorites in terms of I would say probably top 3 that I have so far. Very, very pleased with this model.
So there it was in 1/400 scale by Gemini Jets, the Boeing 787-10. It is, to date, the largest, longest, and heaviest variant of the 787 series from Boeing, and really, it marks Boeing's entrance into the new era of civil aviation, wherein efficiency and capacity and range are the hallmarks of the industry. Gone are the days of the quad jets, it would seem. Aircraft like the A340 being phased out, the 747 even beginning to be phased out, and the fate of the much newer A380 still remains to be seen. But I do think that there is still a market for quad jets, mostly in the cargo sector of aviation, but also the A380, I am not at all convinced it's going to be having its wings clipped forever. So we'll see how things evolve in that regard. But twin engine, wide-body and extra wide-body aircraft like the 787, like the A350, even like the A330neo and like the 757, 767, and the 777 really are still going to be dominating the skies from here on out, at least for the foreseeable future, as far as I am willing to go on record with prognostication. But nonetheless, Gemini Jets, this definitely is one of the better models that they have produced thus far. This is right up there with the A350 as far as I'm concerned in terms of the overall presentation and craftsmanship on this. Everything is absolutely wonderful. The fuselage and wings and empennage are all done in die-cast. The wings and the empennage fit very nicely into the fuselage. There are no big slot gaps or shut lines there that are spoiling the visual proportions of anything. The antennas are all mounted securely and they're all straight, as are the landing gear and the wheels with the rubber tires. They roll very freely, and the main gear pivot as well. It's absolutely wonderful. The only faults, the only criticisms that I have of this model lie with the box, not only with the somewhat suggestively worded flying pleasure, whatever that is, but with the engines there. They said that this particular aircraft has the General Electric engines, and the model is quite clearly marked Rolls-Royce on the engine nacelles, but I'm willing to overlook something like that because the model itself is just splendid, as you can readily see here for the past 40 minutes. So really, it's a great one. It's a 2020 release as well, and this aircraft first flew in 2020 in terms of this particular airframe. So really, it's a wonderful addition to the Gemini Jets lineup, and it's a wonderful addition to my 400 scale collection. So really, very pleased with this one. If you're considering this one, do get it. It's a recent 2020 release, and I don't think you're going to find a better 787-10 in 1/400 scale. Really do like this one very, very much. Until next time, though, I do thank you all very much for watching. Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks, and of course, we will see you soon.